Welcome to the Experience Darden podcast. I'm your host, Brett Twitty, and you are listening to a new episode. On this episode of the podcast, I'm excited to share my recent conversation with Richie Todd. Richie is a second-year student in our full-time MBA class of 2025, and he and I recently connected to talk more about his background, his decision to pursue an MBA, what led him to Darden, his interest in entrepreneurship, and specifically entrepreneurship through acquisition, and so much more. I think you're really going to enjoy this conversation. And as always, if this conversation is helpful for you, please like this episode and subscribe to the Experience Darden podcast so you never miss an update. And remember, you can always check the episode description for links to Darden blogs, social channels, and more. And now, without further ado, here is my conversation with Richie Todd. Richie, welcome to the podcast.
Happy to be here today. Excited to chat with you.
Yeah, it's great to have you on the podcast. How's everything going? How are you doing?
Great. Honestly, this is one of my favorite times of year. I love watching the leaves change colors. Football season's in full swing, and it's also a fun time of year to be a parent. Coming off of Halloween, got 3 little kids at home. Halloween was a lot of fun, and now kind of looking forward to Thanksgiving and Christmas. So, yeah, I'm doing well. How about you? How are you doing?
Everything is good. It's about one of my favorite times of the year too. I'm based up here in the DC area, and I think DC in the fall, I think it's its best season, in my opinion. Yeah. Did you go trick-or-treating on the lawn with your kids?
We didn't make it over there. We came trick-or-treating over here at Darden, and then we went over to a local neighborhood with some families from Darden, but didn't make it over to the lawn.
It looks like a pretty epic trick-or-treating situation there based on the video and photo footage I've seen.
Yeah, I've heard that the kids that go over there come away with like 10 plus pounds of candy. So I think, yeah, I think it would be a blast. Our kids are just so little that I think it would have been a little too chaotic to enjoy, but I've heard it's a blast. So
I get that. I totally understand. It is quite a crowd, and it's I would say very much a tradition at the University of Virginia. It seems like the crowd gets bigger and bigger every year. So, Richie, thank you for your time today. Thanks for coming on the podcast. Let's start just by learning a little bit more about you. So tell us more about who you are and your background.
absolutely. So I grew up in Leesburg, Virginia, which is up in Northern Virginia, just outside of DC. Then after I graduated high school, I spent 2 years serving as a full-time volunteer missionary for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Spent a little bit of time in Mexico and then spent most of my time in Reno, Nevada. And that's actually where I met my wife. We both happened to be serving as missionaries there together. And anyways, after I finished my mission experience, I returned home to Virginia and then very quickly headed back out west where I went to BYU for my undergraduate degree. Studied civil engineering there. I also got married while I was an undergrad there. And after graduating, worked in the construction industry. I've always just had a passion for, working outdoors, seeing things get built. And so took a job in the construction industry there, and worked for a few years and actually started a small business while I was working, still was in Utah at the time. Started a small business that does apartment turnovers. So after a tenant moves out, we provide cleaning, carpet cleaning, painting, handyman work, basically anything needed to get the unit ready for the next people. And I've just always kind of had an entrepreneurial bug, and so thought it's time to try my hand and start a business. And that's kind of what eventually led me to applying to get an MBA, and started thinking about, hey, this business thing is really cool, but I need to get some more formal training. I think it would help me just professionalize myself a little bit. And so, anyways, here we are now at Darden, and loving my experience. I now have 3 little kids, ages 4, 2, and 6 months, 2 boys and then a little girl, and they keep us busy. But we've loved our time here in Charlottesville. Love the program at Darden, and yeah, excited to speak more with you about it now.
I appreciate your sharing all that, Richie. I'm curious about your business, the apartment turnover business. How did you figure out that there was a market for that or there was a need for that kind of business?
Yeah. So while I was working for a general contractor, I just kind of started listening to some podcasts, while I was working or in the evenings when I'd be, going for a jog or something, and listened to an entrepreneurship podcast called Acquiring Minds, where they interview people that buy businesses. And listened to an episode about somebody who bought a cleaning business and then kind of repurposed it into a turnover business. They had the cleaning figured out, but then they added painting and carpet cleaning and a few of these other services. And I just thought that was very interesting. And then, given my background in construction, and then at the time I was also a real estate agent, and I had connections to a handful of property managers who managed small and large portfolios. And so I just kind of reached out to them and said, hey, how do you guys handle your turnovers? When someone moves out, how do you get it ready for the next people? And everybody I spoke with said, this is a huge pain point. We're always running into delays. We're trying to find good vendors to use, and we have to call people back. So long story short, I kind of saw that opportunity there. And given my background in construction and real estate, it was just kind of a natural thing to start. So I just kind of started as a side hustle, just kind of worked on it in the evenings and frankly just the weekends, here an hour, there an hour. And first year or so, I didn't really do anything or make any money. And then kind of the second and third years, it started to grow and gain some momentum.
What is it about entrepreneurship that's always appealed to you? Obviously, there's a real strain of this in your story, doing your own thing.
Yeah, I would say, I don't know that I could put my finger on what exactly drives me. I think part of it is um, I like to control my own destiny, both financially, but then also just having autonomy day to day of what I work on. And, I like to be able to control that and say, hey, today I'm going to work on this project, or, hey, this year I made this amount of money because this is how hard I worked. I did not like being kind of subject to um, my boss or others who at the end of the year said, hey, Richie, here's your year end bonus. Thank you. Thanks for your hard work. This is what we think, you earned for the company. I really wanted to like go and have more control over that. Um, and so I think there's just always been something innate within me. I mean, as a little kid, I had like a snow cone shack that I started at the end of my driveway. I mowed lawns in high school. In college, I started a tandem bike rental business. So I've just always had like little ideas, most of which have been terrible ideas and haven't worked out. But I just kind of love the idea of like starting something, finding an opportunity to provide value to others, and I also really like the aspect of, being an operator and an entrepreneur, but then also being an investor and deciding like, hey, where should I put this money to generate a return? Um, and I think maybe the last thing I would add is just, I love working with people. I love finding employees. I like getting to know customers and adding value to them. So I think kind of all the above is kind of what's been pushing me along my journey.
A tandem bike business, a very specific kind of bike business.
Yeah. So that was born out of I wanted to go on a date with my now wife, and go ride tandem bikes. That kind of sounded like a fun idea. So I look up like, tandem bike rental. I was in Provo, Utah at the time. Googled it and found that they were everywhere was booked for like 3 or 4 weeks. And so I thought, that's ridiculous. Like, why is that? Why is it so hard to get a tandem bike rental? And so me and two other friends bought a tandem bike, put up a website, tried to get some people to rent it. And we actually got decent interest, I would say. But it was logistically very hard. We didn't have like a place to go to pick it up. And so that scared a lot of people, when they just show up at my apartment and they're like, where's this place to rent a tandem bike? They're expecting, like a professional storefront. So anyways, that was a good experience, fun, but didn't make any money.
I guess you learn things along the way, each venture.
Yes, exactly.
So when did the idea of an MBA come along? How long have you been thinking about an MBA?
So I would say it first came to me really as like a junior in college. I had been studying civil engineering. I had done a few engineering internships. I did a construction internship, and I had been enjoying each of those for various reasons. I really liked the technical. I loved the math, kind of a math nerd. So I liked doing that side. But then I also really like looking at the bigger picture and saying like, okay, how are these people adding value? How are they generating revenues. Like what I just kept feeling like I want to see the bigger picture with each role I held. And so the summer between my junior and senior year, I started studying for the GMAT and kind of put it in the back of my head, like, hey, doing an MBA is probably something that I'll end up doing, if nothing else, to kind of help figure out my entrepreneurship desires and dreams and pursue those further. And so I took the GMAT my senior year of college. I took it a few times. And so that's kind of when I first started thinking like, hey, this is something that I want to put on my radar. So I wanted to kind of get the GMAT over with as soon as possible and do it while I was kind of in the school mode of, preparing for tests and thinking that way. Because I know it gets really challenging once you're working and you have other things going on with life. So that's kind of when the seed first was planted. And then, fast forward a couple of years when I was running that small business and working still full time, I kind of started to feel like, hey, this might be a good time to like go and learn how to actually like run a business, how to look at financial statements, and just kind of some of the business basics that I had never learned. Um, so yeah.
How did Darden get on your radar?
So Darden got on my radar a few ways. One, I'm from Virginia, and so UVA, I had a lot of friends who went to UVA for undergrad from my high school. And so I think it's kind of always been on my radar. But then when it came time to applying for MBA programs, at the time I had two kids, and so we were really interested in being in a family-friendly environment. Ultimately, the decision was not just what's best for me, but what's best for my family. And so we wanted to be somewhere that was family friendly, that was like a manageable place to live. My parents are still in Northern Virginia, and so that was an enticing aspect. But then really, as I dug into like the different programs, um, the case study was certainly something that appealed to me. And happy to kind of get into that more. But I think coming from an engineering background, almost all of my education had been okay, hey, this is a formula. This is how you solve for X. X equals 10. That's the right answer. You either got it or you don't. Um, but I wanted to learn like how do you make decisions that aren't so clear, cut and dry? Like how do you deal with ambiguous situations? How do you deal with missing information and make decisions? And I think that's something that is actually more applicable to life. Rarely is there just like a very clear answer. And so very excited about the case method and some of the other programs here at Darden that again can get into. But I think for those reasons, I was kind of first drawn to Darden and decided to kind of peel the onion back and look deeper and ultimately apply.
You mentioned that this is a decision that you were making as a family. What is it about Charlottesville that appealed to you as a family?
I think part of it is just the size. It's not a big city, and so it's easy to get around. It's easy to run to the grocery store and back. There's lots of parks. We feel safe going outside with our families and can get around fairly easily with very limited traffic. And then I think so. So like part of it is just like the city itself, and then the other part of it was the program where I wanted my children to be able to come and see me in school, and like I wanted that to be something that they see like, hey, dad is going to school. They don't really know what it's all about yet, but like I wanted them to be involved. And so wanted to find something where there's lots of family events and lots of regular opportunities for families to come on to campus where it's not like, who brought the kids to this really formal event and spoiled it, but it's like, hey, like this is cool. We got lots of kids running around or spouses or partners or dogs even are welcome. And so I think all those things were kind of a factor when making the decision as a family. And then also just like the cost of living. Where can we find a reasonable place to rent? It's a little bit bigger to accommodate the family. So a little bit of all the above.
I understand it's very much a we thing, having had parents, people with partners here on the podcast before. So Richie, you come to Darden. You're excited about the case method. What is it about the case method in particular that appealed to you as a prospective student as you were thinking about your MBA experience?
So as I mentioned a little bit earlier, I think one of the things was just dealing with ambiguity and learning how to make better decisions. I think certainly if you ask my wife, I am not a great decision maker. I even little things like, hey, where should we go for dinner tonight or something? It's like, oh, well, let me do all this research and find the best option. It's like, I just want to be able to take the information I have and be able to make the best decision and then live with the consequences, good or bad. And so I think that's kind of innate to the case method where, if we're given a case that we read, there's never enough information what we would like. There's always little things missing. But at the end of the day, there's a decision to be made. And the case kind of walks you through like as if you're the protagonist, whether it's a finance case or a marketing case or operations, there's some question or some decision that needs to be made. And so you kind of work through that together. First you work through it on your own as you prepare the case and review the materials, and then you also get to work on it as a learning team. And then you go work through it as a class, as a section, and come to a decision on, what do you think the best is. And so part of it is just working through those. But then I've also found it's just very engaging. That the professor usually is not doing most of the talking, it's the students. And so it's just very engaging class where the professors are asking very specific questions to encourage and lead the class throughout the discussion. But students are the ones providing insight, like based on their own experiences or based on a certain analysis that they did the night before. And so it just allows you to be engaged as opposed to, sitting in the back of the class and scrolling on social media for an hour and a half. Like you have to be engaged, you have to be part of the conversation. And so I've just found it to be very engaging. And then I think maybe the last thing I would add is I think it does a nice job of creating sort of a process or repetition for learning and making those decisions. So as I said, you first read it yourself, then you get a chance to talk about it in a small group setting, bounce ideas off each other. And usually there's, some people that agree, some people that disagree within the learning team, and you kind of come to a consensus as a group. And then you do that again with your section. And I think every case I read it and I think, oh, this is what I would say the answer, this is what the protagonist should do. And then I go to learning team and we find out that I'm the minority. Everyone else thinks they should do something else. And so I'm learning, you learn like, okay, wow, I didn't even consider these different options or ways of thinking about this problem. And then you do it again as a section when you actually meet for class with the professor. And so I think you're just kind of constantly learning and you think one thing and then you're kind of proven wrong and you see unique perspectives. And so I think just that method and that repetition of doing that over and over and over for hundreds of cases throughout, both years, just provides a very unique method for learning that I've loved.
All right. So you come to Darden. You're a brand new first year student with a family in tow. You got a very full plate. What was that adjustment like to being back in school?
It was good. I think that there are two parts to that, like just adjusting with the family. We're in a new town, we don't know anybody. There was that part of it, getting settled into a new place that was challenging. We moved here about a month or so before school started, so we did have some time to kind of settle in there. And then I chose to do Darden before Darden, and I love that program. I thought it was a great way to kind of dip my toe in the water. How does the case method work? And I also got to meet a lot of people where, just another unique setting to meet people. And so then I think that was a great way to kind of transition into the full-time program that started 2 weeks after Darden before Darden. And so I thought the transition was pretty smooth. I love school. I love going to school. I love meeting new people and um, working through all those things. So, even though there were aspects of it that were challenging, kind of getting back into school mode as opposed to just working mode, I loved it. And it was a good transition. And, I'm still loving it now, 14 months later.
What section were you?
Section E. So go Eels.
Do you have a favorite section tradition or a norm that your section observed?
Let's see. So every week we had a Dundee Award. It was called Dundee Award. think it's from The Office, but basically, who was the E of the week? Who did something that was, um, special, or who went out of their way to help someone else, or who had a great insight in class, or who did something kind of above and beyond. And that was given out each Thursday. So we don't have class on Fridays. So like kind of the last day of the week, give out the award, and then the person who won the award the previous week gives it out the next week. So it kind of gets handed around to different people within the class. And so I thought that was just kind of a fun tradition every week, kind of a new spotlight person recognize something. Maybe it wasn't even that extraordinary, but just went above and beyond in some little measure. So that was fun.
Well, I'm curious, Richie, how have your career goals evolved during your time at Darden? When you came into Darden, first year student, have they remained the same? Have they changed in any way? I know obviously you had a lot of entrepreneurial experience in your background, but how have your career goals evolved?
Yeah. So when I came to Darden, I knew that I wanted to be something small business related. I didn't want to do a large Fortune 500 company. I didn't want to go consulting or banking. I wanted to stay small, but I didn't know exactly what form that would take. And to a degree, I still don't have it fully figured out. But in my first year, I spent a lot of time exploring what it would look like to go operate a small business that was owned by somebody else, like a private equity firm. But now, kind of flash forward to where I am today, I really want to have more control and be an entrepreneur. And so I think, whether that looks like buying an existing business, or partnering with some alumni who owns a business, that's kind of where I want to be. I want to have control and be able to make decisions and have an impact, but still learn. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm still new and young and unproven in my career, and so I still want the opportunity to grow. But that entrepreneurship desire is very strong and growing. And I'd say, Darden has a lot of ways to explore that while you're here. And if you want to start a business, there's lots of opportunities to work with the Batten Institute, and participate in the iLab incubator over the summer, where you're kind of working on your business. I didn't participate in any of those because I wanted to explore, private equity operations and things of that nature. But what I did explore was kind of the whole ETA realm. And ETA stands for entrepreneurship through acquisition. And so that's kind of been the focus of my time here is exploring that. What does that look like? How do you go buy a business and things of that nature?
How did you spend your first year summer?
So I worked for Iron Path Capital. They are a private equity firm here in Charlottesville, and worked in their operations team. So they own 6 businesses, and I jumped in and helped with 2 of those businesses on kind of ad hoc projects, everything from marketing analytics to reconfiguring a factory efficiently, and a few other miscellaneous projects. And it was a great summer. I learned a lot. I mean, private equity firms are very good at what they do, maximizing efficiency, growing businesses, improving margins. Kind of everything we learn in business school is what they're practicing every day. And it was also a busy summer. We had a baby in April, right before finals, and so we were we were busy at home with a newborn and 2 toddlers. But it worked out great because the Iron Path is located right here in Charlottesville, so we did not have to move, which was a major blessing. Could get home for dinner each night. So it was a busy summer, both at home as well as in the office. But then also spent some time just working on my business. One of the things I learned over the summer was that I want to be an entrepreneur. I found myself thinking about my business during the day and like, oh, when I get home, I want to work on this or that. And so then after the kids are in bed, I could go home and actually kind of work on those things. So yeah, it was a good summer. I got to work with a good friend of mine from Section E, Custis Coleman. He was also an intern at Iron Path, and we shared an office all summer. So I had a great experience.
Also a podcast guest. Custis has been on the podcast before. It was fun talking with him. So curious about your second year. Obviously, second year, you get to pick your classes. You're involved in, typically, students are involved in a lot of extracurricular activities. What's been occupying your time and attention in your second year?
Yeah. A big focus for me currently is the ETA club. When I came to Darden, as I mentioned, this is an area I wanted to explore, and I connected before coming to Darden with someone named Daniel Vernick. He graduated the year ahead of me, and he had submitted an application to create the ETA club before he left for his summer, which I'm very grateful he did because when he came back, it got approved pretty quickly. Um, but he had kind of lost interest in ETA. He was more interested in returning to his venture capital internship. And so I kind of jumped in and helped build out the club last year. We had our first very few events. And then this year is kind of the first full year where the club is a real club. It was officially voted on a couple of weeks ago and kind of ratified by the other club presidents as the process to become a new club at Darden is requires over a year of work just to prove that it's a real club. So that's been taking a lot of my time, just building out resources for students, working on tinkering with the ETA curriculum here at Darden, and connecting future students, current first year students who are interested in ETA with the right people. And then also one of the goals of the ETA club is to connect with the alumni. There's a lot of Darden alumni who have bought and sold small businesses, and we want to tap into them. We want to touch base with them and kind of build a small business community where if someone's working through a certain issue, they can hit up another Darden alumni and ask how they navigated a similar issue. Or, as students, we can find mentors, maybe even investors from the alumni. And so that's something that's a large focus currently is figuring out, okay, who are the alumni that own and operate a business, and how do we reconnect with them and engage them here with the club?
What's interesting to you about entrepreneurship through acquisition?
So I love the idea that you can go buy an existing business for two main reasons. One, um, you're part entrepreneur and you're part investor. And so, like on the entrepreneur side, you're growing the business. You're figuring out, okay, how do I add value for my customers, and how do I grow revenues, and how do I be more efficient? And so you're utilizing all those things in business school. And then on the other side, you're also an investor that you're trying to figure out, okay, where do I want to invest my money? Do I want to put my money and ultimately my time into this business because I believe it has good fundamentals and can grow? Or would I be better suited doing something else? And so I think that because you can do a little bit of both, you're not just an entrepreneur, you're not just an investor, but you can do both. I think that's what really appealed to me. Um, and to just kind of leverage somebody else's business that they've already started. I think that, we've heard that going from zero to one and starting a new business can be very challenging, but being able to buy an existing business that already has customers, that already has cash flows, can be a very attractive opportunity for MBA students who want to go put all their business knowledge to work that they just gained over the last 2 years and go implement it in a meaningful way. And then kind of the last piece of it is just, again, working with the people. When you buy a business, you get plugged into this little ecosystem of employees and customers. And so getting to know them and their families and what makes them excited is also really exciting. So I think for all those reasons, I think it's a great career path for MBA students, not necessarily for everybody, but it's been something that's very exciting for me. And I truly believe that Darden is kind of uniquely suited for those pursuing ETA. And I know Megan McGee, who you interviewed a couple of weeks ago, she kind of went into greater detail on that. But I just think it's a great program to prepare you to go run a business.
So, what classes have been really exciting to you as you've been picking your classes here in the elective period? What have you been really excited about? Are there any classes you would want to mention here?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think there's a whole bunch. One of them that I'm currently in that I've been really enjoying is called Applied Security Analysis. And when I first read that, it seemed like a very technical finance type class. But really, what it is like, hey, what makes a great business from an investor's perspective? And whether you're talking about large public companies or small private companies or startups, we're kind of asking the same questions of, hey, does this business have good fundamentals? What it is? is its competitive advantage? Does it have an ability to grow? And so I think that class has done a great job of like teaching me, somebody who wants to go buy a business in the future, of like, hey, what are the things to look for? So I've loved that class. I think some of the others, I'm in a managerial finance class that is kind of geared towards, as the name implies, like managing the finances of a small business. So I've enjoyed that one. I took a private equity class that was great, how to build models and forecast returns of investing into a business. And then there's also a couple of ETA specific classes. There's an entrepreneurship through acquisition class. There's a tactical topics for entrepreneurship through acquisition class. And then there's an acquisition of closely held enterprises class, that are all, they have a little bit of overlap in terms of, but they're all about ETA. And so different aspects of the ETA process, whether that's buying or operating or investing, they all kind of touch on things surrounding that. And then the last thing I just want to highlight is, I'm actually working with Les Alexander right now to get a new course started. That would be kind of an ETA incubator of sorts for second year students, that would go through quarter 3 and quarter 4, so kind of your last 2 quarters of an MBA program, and would serve as an incubator accelerator, for those who really want to go buy a business. And it'd be a small, tight knit group working with alumni, and you're basically actively searching for a business. So as opposed to some of the other classes where we're kind of theoretically learning, here's how you would go do it. It's like, okay, we're actually going to go do this, and we're going to work together as a group to do it. So that's something that I've been excited about as well.
Well, that is really cool to hear about that class. We've had Les Alexander on the podcast via our Office Hours series, and such an interesting person. He's got so much great experience. I'm not surprised to hear he's involved with the creation of that class.
Yeah, well, this is great. I've enjoyed getting to know him, and he's excited about the ETA program here at Darden, and he'll certainly be a big part of that going forward.
Well, Richie, anything else you're looking forward to here in your second year that you'd want to mention?
Yeah, there are two things that I'm excited about. One is just that applied security analysis class. I know it sounds a little nerdy, but I find myself like literally counting down to go to class because the cases are very interesting. We've had some great speakers, and I just know I'm going to learn. I prepare, and every time I prepare, I'm like wrong to some degree, but that's great because I'm learning. And so, like, it's not often you're like literally counting down till a specific class, but I've really enjoyed that class. And then, kind of the other thing I'm just excited about is I'm excited about my post-Darden plans. I've been working with a couple of alumni, and I just feel like the future is bright for really anybody who's at Darden. But I'm just excited to be working with them and figure out where I'll be next year and what I'll be working on. So lots to look forward to, and happy to be here.
Well, Richie, last question for you here. Thank you so much for everything you've shared thus far. But what's a piece of advice you would encourage our prospective student listeners to keep in mind as they think about their own MBA journeys?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say it's important to nail down your story. Um, when you're applying to an MBA program, there's kind of this idea of like, hey, this is what I've been working on before, and then I want to go get an MBA in order to accomplish something different. And that's a different story for everybody. And frankly, your story can change. But I think just figuring that story out and figuring out why a Darden MBA program will be helpful to you, and then being able to articulate that through your application, whether that's essays or interviews or whatnot, and just kind of building that cohesive story in a way that is very compelling, I think is the key. I mean, I'm no admissions consultant by any means, but I think that just figuring out like really what it is that you want to accomplish and then being able to articulate your story around that is something you'll do a lot, even before you get to Darden, but then also once you get to Darden, you're telling that story to recruiters, to classmates, to professors. And so just kind of figuring out what that is a key component.
It's great advice. It certainly aligns with a lot of what we share as the admissions committee. Encourage candidates as they approach the admissions process not to think about it as Oh, I'm just providing this information that's being requested, and more so think about it as a storytelling exercise. This is your chance to introduce yourself to the admissions committee. Take full advantage of it. Really think about each part of your application. And if you're invited for an interview, the interview help us get to know you better as a person, what you've done academically, what you've done professionally, why you're excited about an MBA, why Darden in particular, and how all this fits into your career goals, short term and long term. So, Richie, thank you so much for your time today. It's been great talking with you.
Likewise, Brett. Appreciate it.
And that was my conversation with Richie Todd, a second-year student in our full-time MBA class of 2025. As always, if you have any comments, suggestions, requests, anything you'd like for us to cover here on the podcast, we're all ears. We can be reached at Darden, that's Darden, @virginia.edu. Until next time, stay safe, be well, and thanks for listening.